Keyframes allow you to create cool zoom in or zoom out effects. They enable you to animate motion graphics. Not only that, but there are more tricks you can achieve with keyframing that many big YouTubers use in their videos. In today's advanced CapCut tutorial, you're going to learn everything about keyframes. In short, a keyframe marks the starting and ending points of a change in properties. Let's get started. Let's start with a slow zoom in effect. I already have a video on the timeline that I want to use. First, make sure the video is selected and place the playhead where you want the zoom effect to start. With your clip selected, hover over to the right menu, where you'll notice a diamond-shaped button next to the scale. This button is a keyframe. When you click on it, the shape turns blue, indicating that it's active. You'll also notice that the diamond shape now appears on our video, marking the starting point of any changes we're about to make. I'll leave the scale for the starting point at 100%. Move the keyframe to any point on the timeline and increase the scale as much as you want. The second keyframe will be automatically created. If I move the playhead back and play the video, you'll notice that the change in the scale only occurs between the two keyframes. As the video plays, you'll see how the scale changes while the video zooms in. But what if you want to slow zoom out instead? To zoom out a video, first make sure the first keyframe for scale is created. Next, increase the scale of the video. Then, move the playhead forward and decrease the scale back to normal. Now, when you play the video, it will start zoomed in and then slowly zoom out. Looks great. However, sometimes you might want a sudden or dramatic zoom out. All you need to do is bring the starting and ending points of the keyframe close to each other. The closer they are, the faster the zoom out will be. This same method can be applied to the zoom in effect. Once the keyframes are close to each other, it will create a dramatic zoom in. Furthermore, you can add another keyframe to slowly zoom out, creating a great cinematic effect. Just experiment with the keyframes to achieve the zoom effect you want. What if you want to create this tilt effect? Well, it can be done with keyframes. First, make sure the video is selected. Zoom in a little to avoid having black bars in the corners of the video frame once we start tilting. On the right menu, turn on the keyframe for rotation, and use this wheel to tilt the clip to around -11.5 degrees. Now move the playhead somewhere on the timeline, and this time, increase the rotation to 11.5 degrees. Make sure to avoid having black lines in the corners. The second keyframe will be created automatically once you enter the rotation values. Move the playhead again and repeat the process for as long as you want. Once you're done, your video should look like this. Slowly tilting. If you want faster tilting, simply bring the keyframes closer together. Did you know you can also create this cool color change effect using keyframes? Let me show you. First, let's click on the text and write something. I'll make it bigger so everyone can see it clearly. When you scroll to where there's color, you can see that there's a keyframe. Click on it to turn it on. Move the playhead a few frames forward, go back to the right menu, and change the color to orange. The second keyframe will be automatically created. Now, when we replay the video, you'll see the color shift. Move the second keyframe farther if you want the change to happen slowly. Let's create more keyframes with different colors. This is fantastic. Did you know that you can track a person or a ball in the middle of the frame using keyframes? We're going to try to keep the head of this joyful woman in the center of the video. First, I'll use something to show me the center of the video. Click on text, then type a dot, make it larger, and position it in the center of the video. This will help us determine the center, but you can use anything to show you the center. Next, select the video and move the playhead to the start of the video. Hover over to the right menu and turn on the keyframe for position and size. Use the right arrow key on your keyboard to move the playhead forward on the timeline. If the head is not in the center, move it back to the center, using the dot as a guide. The other keyframes will be created automatically as you change the position and size of your clip. You can zoom in or out as you're tracking the subject. Once you're done, delete the dot and watch the result of your hard work. Just don't forget to delete the overlay you were using as a guide once you're done. Here's another example where I was tracking the ball. All I did was just to make sure the ball remains in the center using keyframes. Now I'm going to show you how to create a color shift for your video. First, select the video, then click on Adjustment. I want my video to start with colors and then switch to black and white. This means I need to create the first keyframe for saturation with the default values. Next, I'll move the playhead forward and decrease the saturation all the way to black and white. The result is fantastic. If you want the change to happen faster, just bring the keyframes closer together. As you can see, saturation is not the only adjustment you can control using keyframes. Any adjustment with the keyframe button next to it can be easily controlled with keyframes. This includes exposure, which can come in handy sometimes. Not only that, even a vignette can be controlled with keyframes. What about LUTs? Yes, LUT intensity can also be controlled with keyframes. I hope you'll experiment with this trick to make your videos even better. Keyframes can also be used to control a mask effect. Select your video, hover over to the left menu, and click on the mask. Let's use the horizontal mask. First, I'm going to move the mask out of the frame. Under Masks, there are more settings that you can control using keyframes. For instance, let's turn on the keyframe for position. Move the playhead a few frames forward. Hover over the preview screen and move the mask all the way down. This creates a very cool effect. We can also decide to make the mask slowly increase in size by simply turning on the keyframe for size. Move the playhead and increase the size of the mask. I'll create a detailed video on the masking effect soon. Let me show you how to create this cool fade-out effect. My video is already on the timeline. I'll move the playhead toward the end of the clip, then hover over the right menu and click on Blend. Next, turn on the keyframe for opacity. Go back to the timeline, move the playhead to the end of the clip, and reduce the opacity all the way down to 0%. Now, when you replay your video, you'll have a cool ending effect. Let's create a cool scaling animation. First, I'll place the image on the timeline and make it very small. Next, hover over to the right menu and create a keyframe for the scale. Move the playhead to the end of the clip and increase the size to as big as you want. When you play the video, you should see this cool effect. Let's animate an overlay to track the hand of this sensei. I'll use one of my images, but this can be done with any overlay. First, resize the image and place it on the hand you want to track. Next, select the picture, go to the right menu, and turn on the keyframe for position. Use the right arrow key to move forward. Whenever the hand moves away from the image, adjust the position of the image so it can follow the hand. Keyframes will be created automatically for you. Do this for as long as you want. And once you're done, the clip should look like this. If you want, you can stretch the length of the photo and create more keyframes. This method of tracking can also be used for text or stickers. Besides tracking, we can also create cool animations. Using the same method, create the first keyframe for position. Then, move the playhead while adjusting the position of the overlay. Furthermore, we can even rotate the image. All you need to do is select the image you want to animate. Hover over to the right menu and turn on the keyframe for rotation. Move the playhead to the middle of the image. Use the rotation wheel to rotate your image. Move the playhead again and rotate the image. The result should look stunning. Keyframes are not only limited to visuals. Let me show you how I use them for audio. Let's say I want the audio to start high and then slowly reduce in volume. First, I'll create the initial keyframe with a normal volume. Next, move the playhead to where I want the endpoint keyframe to be. Go back to the right menu and decrease the volume. You'll clearly see how the audio waves increase and decrease as I adjust the volume. As you heard, the volume slowly decreased. I can keep adding more keyframes between where I want the audio to be low or high, depending on my video. Did you know you can make your own transition using keyframes? First, place the overlay videos on the timeline on top of the main video. Next, move the playhead a few frames before the second video. Go to the right menu and create a keyframe for position. Move the playhead to where the second video begins and move the first video out of the frame. Now select the second video and create the first keyframe, then move it out of the frame. Move the playhead a few frames forward. Hover over the right menu and hold the down arrow of the Y position to bring down the video, then drag it to the middle of the frame. Let's play what we've created. It looks good, but we can make it better. To get rid of the black screen, just drag the second video backward together with the keyframes. Keep moving the layer of the second video back until the gap is closed. Just repeat the same process for all the videos you want, and you can use any direction for your transition. Lastly, let's talk about filters. If I want to use this filter, but I want the intensity to start low and then slowly increase, I'll first head over to the right menu and turn on the keyframe for intensity and lower it to 0. Next, I'll move the playhead on the timeline and increase the intensity back to 100%. Now let's play the video. Looks fantastic. If I want the filter to start having an effect around the 5-second mark, I'll move the playhead and create the second keyframe with the same values as the first keyframe. This means there's no change between point 1 and point 2. Then, I'll move the playhead and increase the intensity of the effect. If you want to create trending motion graphics using keyframes, click on the videos on the screen.